Somewhere in the dark gap behind your garage wall, in a crack you have never once inspected, there is a spider who has just sensed something wrong. She cannot see it yet. But the vibration reaching her through the wood is new, controlled, deliberate, nothing like the wind, nothing like the settling of an old structure. Something is hunting her, specifically her, in a space she has always considered the safest place she knows. You will never witness this moment. It happens in total silence, behind drywall and siding, in the kind of forgotten corner most homeowners only notice once a year, if ever. But it is happening right now, in countless walls, garages, and porch corners around you, and the outcome of that silent encounter is the entire reason you should put down whatever tool you are holding before you scrape that ugly mud tube off your siding. Because the thing closing in on that spider in the dark is not a monster. It is smaller than your fingernail, armed with a sting most entomologists will tell you they have never personally felt, and it is, by any honest measure, one of the most efficient assassins your backyard has ever produced. Let's talk about what an ambush from a mud dauber actually looks like, because almost no one has ever seen it, and the details are stranger than anything a horror film would invent. The wasp does not chase. She locates a web, a crevice, a dark recess where a spider has settled, and she approaches with a stillness that borders on patience, scanning, adjusting her angle, waiting for the precise moment of contact. When she strikes, it lasts less than a second. A single sting, delivered with surgical accuracy directly into the spider's nervous system, not into muscle, not into open tissue, into the exact cluster of nerve ganglia that controls movement. And then something happens that should not be possible by the rules you think govern predator and prey. The spider does not die. It goes still, completely, permanently, while remaining biologically alive, its heart beating, its tissues fresh, its body suspended in a paralysis so total and so precisely targeted that researchers studying the venom have described it as one of the most sophisticated neurotoxic cocktails identified in any solitary wasp species. She has not killed her enemy. She has switched it off. Now picture what happens next, because this is the part of the story that turns an ordinary mud tube into something closer to a sealed crime scene, except the crime is one your garden desperately needs committed. The wasp clamps onto the paralyzed, fully conscious spider and flies it back to a tube of mud she built days earlier, sometimes barely a centimeter wide, and pushes the living body inside. Then she returns to hunt again. And again. Stuffing one paralyzed spider after another into the same dark chamber, stacking them like cargo, until the tube can hold no more. I remember the first time I read a description of opening one of these chambers under laboratory conditions and finding 6, 7, sometimes more than 10 spiders inside a single segment, every one of them alive, every one of them aware in whatever limited sense their nervous system still permitted, unable to move a single leg. Let that settle for a moment. The ugly gray tube on your wall that you assumed was empty mud may currently be holding a row of living spiders in storage, conscious captives in a pantry built specifically to keep them fresh. And fresh is exactly the right word, because what she is building is not a tomb. It is a refrigerator with a single, terrible purpose. Once the chamber is full, she lays one egg directly onto the most recently captured spider and seals the tube with a final plug of fresh mud, sealing the chamber into total darkness. When that egg hatches days later, the larva does not need to hunt, does not need to search, does not need to do anything except begin eating, starting with the freshest paralyzed body closest to it and working backward through the stack, each spider lasting just long enough to keep the larva alive until it reaches the next one. The wasp engineered an entire supply chain before her offspring even existed, calculated to the exact number of spiders required to carry a single larva from hatching to pupation, sealed inside a structure she will never see opened and a child she will never meet. Here is the detail that should genuinely change how you feel about the next mud tube you find, because it concerns exactly which spider gets selected for that pantry. Researchers studying the prey stored inside blue mud dauber nests across multiple states have found something that should not be statistically possible if the wasp were simply grabbing whatever spider crossed her path. Black widows, specifically, appear in these nests at rates far exceeding their actual abundance in the surrounding environment, with some chambers containing almost nothing else. The blue mud dauber is not an opportunistic hunter stumbling onto easy prey. She is, by every measure researchers can apply, a specialist, actively seeking out one of the only spiders in North America capable of seriously harming a human being, and doing it with a frequency that suggests deliberate preference rather than coincidence. If you have ever lifted a box in your garage and felt that specific jolt of recognition at a black widow's red marking, somewhere nearby, in a tube you walked past without looking, there is a real chance one of her recent relatives is already paralyzed and stacked inside, never to produce another egg sac in your garage again. This kind of selectivity raises an obvious question entomologists have spent real effort answering. How does a wasp with no memory in any sense we would recognize manage to specialize this precisely? The current evidence points to chemical recognition rather than learned skill. Mud daubers appear to identify spider prey largely through scent and vibration cues specific to web structure and silk chemistry, with certain species, including black widows, producing signatures that blue mud daubers are unusually attuned to detecting at close range. She is not choosing through experience built over a lifetime. She is built, from the moment she emerges from her own mud chamber, already tuned to a frequency that leads her straight to the most dangerous spider in the yard. So why does this matter for the structure currently on your wall? Because what you are looking at is not random. It is the output of a hunting operation precisely calibrated to remove the one threat in your environment that medicine actually takes seriously, conducted in the exact dark crevices, wall gaps, and undisturbed corners where black widows prefer to build their own webs, spaces no spray reaches as thoroughly and no trap monitors as continuously. The mud dauber works those spaces because that is where her preferred prey lives, which means her presence on your property is not incidental to your safety. It is actively organized around it. It is worth knowing that not every tube on your wall belongs to the same specialist. 3 species build the structures you are most likely to encounter, and they do not all hunt the same way. The black and yellow mud dauber, the most commonly seen, builds rougher, less organized clusters and takes a broader range of spider prey without the same documented preference for black widows. The organ-pipe mud dauber constructs long, parallel tubes that genuinely resemble the instrument that gave it its name, often stacked side by side on a single wall like a tiny architectural installation. But it is specifically Calibian californicum, the blue mud dauber, with its metallic, almost iridescent dark body, that carries the black widow specialization, and she is often distinguishable from the others by that subtle blue-black sheen catching the light as she works. 3 different builders, 3 different hunting profiles, all producing structures that look nearly identical to an untrained eye, and all of them, to varying degrees, quietly working against the spider population in spaces you never think to check. There is one final scene to this story, and it belongs to the tubes that have already finished their work, the old, dry, abandoned chambers you might eventually decide to remove. If you ever break one open after a full season has passed, be prepared for what falls out. Mummified spiders, preserved in the exact posture they held the instant the venom locked their bodies still, sometimes a dozen or more from a single nest, dried into a kind of accidental museum that no human collector could have assembled with this precision. Some people find this unsettling. I find it to be one of the most honest records nature leaves behind, a complete inventory of exactly what was sharing your walls with you, gathered and sealed by something smaller than your thumb that never once asked for credit. So before that tool comes down on the next mud tube you notice, look for movement first. An active nest, one she is still working, should be left entirely alone. She will finish within the season and never return to reuse it. An abandoned one, dry and sealed with no traffic in or out, can be left for the overwintering insects that use the empty tubes, or removed carefully once winter arrives and you are certain nothing remains inside. What you should never do is destroy a nest mid-construction, because in doing so you are not removing an eyesore. You are calling off an assassination that was already underway, on your behalf, against the one creature in your yard you actually have a reason to fear. Have you ever found a mud dauber nest, or broken open an old one and discovered what was sealed inside? Tell me about it in the comments below. I read every single one, and the spider counts people report finding never stop surprising me. And if you want to understand another hunter doing precise, calculated work in the dark corners of your property right now, completely unnoticed, the next video is already waiting for you.